Okay, here I go. Welcome back, everybody. This is Andrea with From Mrs. to Ms. I am super excited about my guest today. I have the wonderful Ozzie Osborne. And I know you guys are going, I'm sure she gets that all the time. But to just tell you a little bit about her, she is a highly skilled love and relationship practitioner. She is a single mom and a neuroscience geek. Ooh, I like that. She supports men and women in creating epic relationships in their lives. And after a toxic 14-year marriage, a painful divorce, and 12 years full of healing old trauma, she has transformed her heartbreak into a mission and created a powerful coaching program. I love this. So the program's designed to enable your clients to develop a loving connection with themselves, right? And others through uncovering their relationship patterns and then just finding their authentic path. So that's super exciting. This year you started your own podcast too.
I did.
You did. And it's called Wisdom of Oz. What a great name. So I just want to welcome you to From Mrs. to Ms. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Fun thing to do. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So, okay, I have to ask the first question, which everybody's going to want to know. And I'm sure you get asked all the time about your name. Oh. Is this a God-given name, Ozzie Osborne? No, you just went with it.
No, I either get asked if I am the daughter that was never shown on the show, or I'm related. Actually, I spell it completely differently. I've always been called Ozzie as a nickname. And then I was dating a guy with the last name of Osborne, and we were laughing. We're like, what if one day we got married? And
yeah.
Sure enough.
And there it is. You got married. That's who you married.
And then got divorced.
But you kept the name. I would
like,
too.
what the heck?
That's awesome. I would do that too. I love it. Well,
although I will tell you that sometimes it gets me into places, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people are like, did you make up that name?
Do you just want to go, it's my God-given name sometimes. You just want to say it just to get yourself in places. That's what I would do.
No, I just want to say, Sharon.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I just thought that you would be such a great guest to have, and I really appreciate it. Because, you know, I do talk about life after divorce and tragedy and heartbreak and just, you know, the loss of someone, period. It doesn't even have to be a passing away. So I think that what you do on a daily basis just works so well with what I'm trying to talk about. And I thought you would just be perfect to kind of give me your insight on some things.
Yes,
let's dive in. Okay, so I loved looking at, first of all, your website was great. Beautiful pictures of you, by the way, on there. You just look amazing. So I loved hearing and reading about your story. Okay, so the fact that you felt compelled to read and learn and research how to effectively rebuild a man's masculinity, but in a way that kind of allowed him to almost appear to be more feminine. That's fascinating to me. So will you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I always felt very connected to men. I always had more men friends and male friends than I did female friends. But there was, you know, it began with my relationship with my dad. There was always a sense that I felt sad for him. I felt his sadness. I felt his loneliness within his own marriage, even growing up. And so I knew that I was meant to work with men, not necessarily to change anything in masculinity, because I don't necessarily think we need to change anything in masculinity. I think as human beings and as years go by, we evolve and we evolve into different things, and we all have masculine energy within us. Yeah. And so I really started to connect, and my first few clients were all male, and then I continue to work with men. And I work with them for a short stint, and then I send them off to work, do men work.
Do their own work themselves.
Yeah, well, men's work. I really truly believe in the value of men's work with men.
Okay.
I can't teach a man how to be a man.
Yeah.
What I can do is I can I could drop him into his heart, and I could support him in the allowance of expressing their feelings. And then they go off and learn how to be
like a child, almost letting them go when they're 18 and letting them go be an adult, right?
Yeah, and they're beautiful men. I mean, I've encountered so many incredible men. You know, all my male clients are just such big hearts, such desire to please and to want to do good in the world. And you know, one of the biggest fears that I see in men today is the fear of disappointing, or the fear of failing, or the fear of just not being expressed. And
Mm.
so, or even having a purpose, because as we see, today women are very independent and
Mhm.
very much in, I don't need a man type of space,
Yeah.
which is not true. But um and so men are I'm noticing that men are just having a little bit of a hard time finding their groove or even finding their strength. So we're noticing a lot more loneliness in men. We're noticing a lot more withdrawal. We're
Mhm.
even in the dating world, we're noticing men low effort, not as
Mhm.
much, right? Not eager to court you for fear of doing it wrong. So yeah, it's we're in a very interesting time with men today.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you just said that about the not courting or making the effort is a fear of them doing it wrong, because because I am dating or trying to, right? And so I think that from my perspective, it just appears like they just don't want to make an effort, period. It's not, like we're not really understanding why. So I think this is great to kind of hear this from you today, because a lot of us women are just feeling deflated, like the
Hmm.
men just don't want to make an effort anymore. They don't want to try to court us. They just want to have sex, a lot of them, right off the bat. And so that's interesting to hear that it's, something going on their side as well.
Well, sex is a low hanging fruit, and a lot of men actually are not really seeking sex; they're seeking connection. And it appears as though sex, they think that that's what we want.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women right now that are not wanting the relationship; they're wanting the casual relationship. So roles have somewhat reversed, and it leaves a
Yes.
lot of confusion for both men and women.
Uh-huh.
But when we're noticing men withdrawing or not making an effort, it's not that they don't want to. That's not what I'm hearing, at least from the
Yeah.
men that I'm working with.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to. It's mostly because of the fear of not being good enough.
Interesting. So kind of a rejection. And are they feeling it's not being reciprocated when they do make those efforts?
Yeah. I mean, they're feeling that there's such a high expectation of them that
Hmm.
they don't want to fail and they do want to do good by us. But we have our own cars, we have our own homes, we have our own jobs, we could have our own children without them. And I
Hmm.
think it's just leaving them to feel as though, well, what's in
How
it
do
for
they fit
me?
in?
Yeah, like how
Yeah.
can I be for a very long time, the role of the masculine was to provide, protect, and procreate.
Hmm.
And if there's no need for that from the masculine, then what is their role? So now, rather than fixing it, I think we just have to redefine it. We have to sort of establish a different understanding. So
Hmm.
both the feminine and the masculine can communicate in a way that actually feels aligned for both the new woman today, right,
Uh-huh.
versus the new man today. What does that look like? And so we have to leave space for them to rise. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I spend time teaching women how to invite that, because it's so natural for us as we're doers.
Hmm.
We're doers now. We become the doers. We become especially as a single mom. I'm sure you could relate. You played both
Yes.
roles, mom and dad. You have to be in this sort of um, role that you probably didn't even ask for, but you fell into it. You fit into it because you could get shit done really easily, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Rather than delegating, I can get it done faster myself. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I teach women is how to start to receive, how to start to feel safe, and because it hasn't felt safe to receive from a man. So how can I ask a man? I call it the pickle jar experiment. I talk a lot about this on a lot of my shows.
Hmm.
And the pickle jar experiment is really, think of a pickle jar, right? You
Hmm.
you can probably open a pickle jar on your own. You probably don't need anyone to help you. But how good does it feel for you and your a potential male partner or even male partner if you hand the pickle jar to your partner and ask them to open it for you,
Hmm.
knowing you could do it yourself?
No, you can do it.
So I teach women, go to the supermarket, and even if you could reach the can that's the highest shelf,
Hmm.
turn around and see if there's any men around you. It doesn't matter if they're good looking or not, if you're attracted to them or not,
Yeah.
married or not, but
Yeah.
start to practice receiving support
Uh-huh.
and helping men today rise back into their purpose of being our hero, being our lead, right? We really want them to lead. We want them to make
Hmm.
the effort. but yet we do it for them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. And I think I'd heard that before, kind of that men do tend to fall in love a little bit more when there is a need for them, when they have to come over, you kind of think of something for them to do. I need my chair built, or put together. Could you help me? And by doing that practice and actually building something and having a purpose, I think is kind of what you're saying. It almost feeds them again and it rebuilds them to where we want them.
Well, what actually rebuilds them is that plus the praise, right? So it's there has to come praise with that. Right. And,
Okay.
you think of the Pavlovian experiment, right? Like you reward. I mean, I'm not correlating men
A
to
dog.
dogs. So please, men, don't come after me. You're not dogs. But it's the same thing. So if you could say this about women too. When you start, when you train someone that if they do X plus Z equals a reward, they're going to want to do it over and over and over again. And so again, as strong, independent women today, go out and start to ask for support, say thank you, praise them. When a man opens a door for you, don't just say I don't need it. Or if a man offers his jacket to you, don't say no thank you. Just take it, even though you might be okay. Just be like, that is so sweet, thank you, I really appreciate it. And you make eye contact with them and let them know that you see them and that you recognize their effort.
Oh, I love this. No, I think that's great. It's almost a little bit of a social experiment to see how that goes. I love that. I love that. So you talk a lot about the masculine and feminine energies. So just so we get a better understanding of how that all works, like what's your insight to the dynamics of these? Like how do they differ and how do these energies kind of manifest in various aspects of our lives?
Yeah, so we all have both masculine and feminine energies within us, and they're energies that live within us and that serve different purposes. So the feminine is really much more of, think of water, kind of flowy, all over the
Mhm.
place. Sometimes she's stormy, sometimes it's right, it's
That's a
loud, it's
great
right.
analogy.
Where the masculine is very a very single focused, very much in their purpose, very much is responsible for the container, the time and the space that is created. So as a woman, your masculine is a part of you that creates schedules for yourself or boundaries for yourself
Mhm.
or calendar for yourself. That's the masculine part of you. And also the doing part. If when you're focused on a project, you're in your masculine. You also have your feminine energy, and your
Mhm.
feminine energy allows you to really express love. That's really the purpose of the
Mm.
feminine. It's actually a really beautiful energy that we often
Mhm.
overlook because we learn that in order to be seen in this world, in a world that appeared back in the day to be run by men and to be controlled by men, we thought we had to look like them and
Yeah.
behave like them. And so we started to rely on the masculine energy, and that's all we relied on because it gave us strength, and I'm putting that in
Right.
quotations,
Yes, absolutely.
right? So I think it's important that we recognize that there's a dance actually. And so when you start to learn about your energies, you start to kind of get curious around, what does it feel like when I'm in my feminine, right? So
Mhm.
she's very much more when, when you're dancing or you're letting loose, she's very free,
Yes, and you're
right?
letting the man lead, right?
Yes. Yes. And when you're
Oh,
and the masculine, so it's not a gender thing. It's simply just an energy that's again
mhm,
living with us. And when we learn how to sort of integrate both and we can
mhm,
really be both in our masculine, which is very, very focused and very I call it the oak tree, very
mhm.
much you're sturdy, but yet you're not breakable,
Oh, I love that.
right? You're
That's
flexible.
beautiful.
So the
Yeah,
feminine is sort of this, the feminine brings color and life to the tree,
yeah,
whereas the masculine sort of stands there and it's a I got you, it's the I got you energy.
yeah, that's amazing. So I tend to really go into the masculine energy, for myself with dating, just because I was kind of, throughout my marriage, kind of, I took care of a lot of things and I had to step up and do that as well as once I was divorced. And so it was very difficult and has been very difficult for me to step back into that feminine energy. And I would find, even going out with men, or I would call them really, I'd be the one to call first or follow up with a text and say, I had a great time. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, step back and lean out, right? And let the man kind of be the man and do that masculine energy and be in my feminine. And it's funny, I've been able to actually turn it around, which has been very interesting for me. And I feel a lot less anxiety, I think, from it as well, because I'm just sitting back, and if they call, they call. And if they don't, they don't, instead of me chasing and trying to make something happen.
Yeah.
So is there a way that you would often suggest for people that are maybe a little bit too much in their masculine energy, that need to step back for a woman? How would you say to go about doing that?
Yeah, when a woman is dominantly in her masculine, I would say again, practicing the receiving for men.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add something because I think it's important to add some context here because I think it's important for us to understand why it is that we sort of have come to rely on them on our own masculine. For many years, women have been um, taken advantage of or made to feel weak or raped and objectified.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a very long time it wasn't safe for us to be in our feminine, and thereby we had to we couldn't even rely on the masculine. We couldn't trust, so we started to lose trust in the masculine of the world, right outside of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And so
Okay.
it never felt safe for us to really truly be in our fullest expression, which is both the masculine and the feminine. And so we became dominant in one area or the other. Now we're noticing men more dominant in their feminine
Mm-hmm.
and women more dominant in their masculine. And so the practice is really, again, it's about receivership. It's about learning how to drop into your heart. So if I were to tell you how to practice that in your body, because a lot of it is somatic, is really practicing trust. It's practicing groundedness and presence. So a couple of things. It's also practicing playfulness because that's a piece
Interesting. Yeah.
we don't trust that the masculine or a man
Yeah.
can take the playfulness as just that, because oftentimes that can be translated when we're playful, then we're
Mm-hmm.
flirty, and then that means that
Mm-hmm.
we want to have sex with them. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we hold back on that because we fear that they might get the wrong idea or the wrong impression of our expression.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
That's the
but
nail on the head right there for sure.
yeah, and so remember that it being in our feminine is playful, right?
Yeah.
So bringing playfulness back into play. So I always say before you go on a date
Mm-hmm.
to start to get in your feminine very early on in the day. So if you have a
Okay.
date on a Friday night, let's say, on Friday morning, you start to put on sexy music. You put on really something that makes you feel sexy. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Right.
You put on a cute undies, cute underwear, or cute bra, and just
Mm-hmm.
start to really flow and put music on that makes you feel very feminine and start to dance. I also will recommend that you pleasure yourself.
Mm. I love this talk. Tell me more.
So when you So when you pleasure yourself, you are filling your cup. You are now not coming with a needy energy to the masculine. You're coming
Mm-hmm.
to the date satisfied in pleasure.
Wow.
And that energy is very magnifying, very
Yeah.
magnetic, I should say.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so when you are in that energy, and
Mm-hmm.
you're feminine, it is very attractive. Now, you want to be mindful because if you go on a date with someone who might not be aligned with you in terms of values and other things,
Mm-hmm.
you do want to be mindful of it, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't practice it.
I love
It
this.
doesn't mean that you
That's
can't
great.
practice it.
No, that's absolutely very smart thinking to do that, because it's almost like you don't want to go to the grocery store when you're hungry, right? Like
Mhm.
you want to eat before you go. So I love that. I love that. So I'm going to touch back a little bit on some things that I saw on your website and just from watching a couple of your episodes. And you talked a little bit about, kind of, it seemed like hitting rock bottom and realizing where you were at in order to get back out there and start what you did with your career and what you're doing. So what was the rock bottom that allowed you to realize that you are not unlovable and that there is life after tragedy, divorce, heartbreak, whatever it might be?
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what I learned was that the I'm not lovable actually was birthed at a very young age. So for me, it was when I was young, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt that from my mom, and I felt that from my dad. And so I started to believe that. And then the world showed that to me again and again in different relationships. And then when I got married, I came to the marriage with a lot of expectation and
Okay.
also a lot of the background noise, right? The
Yeah.
subconscious was hanging on to that belief. And so I never really came into the marriage in full fairness. I didn't come into the marriage fully expressed. I held back. I kind of let go certain things that I noticed did not align with my own core values.
Mm.
And so when I 12 years ago, when my marriage ended, I realized that I had that same feeling again because the marriage ended in betrayal. And that
Okay.
betrayal then reminded me of the betrayal that I felt from my own parents.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so that knowing, right, having the access to that knowing
Mhm.
allowed me to open the gates to start to do the healing work
Mm.
and start
Interesting.
to forgive and accept that it's part of me.
Yeah. And did
Right.
you have conversations throughout the marriage with him about where, you were coming from and why you were feeling the way you did and all of those things? Was that like an open dialogue?
Yes and no. I think I came to the conversations more of the expectation that you should change, that you should do X, Y, and Z in order to make me feel a certain way.
Mm.
But what I learned in my healing and in my work and what I teach is it's not a you thing because he's simply reflecting to me a part of me that I never knew and never met. And
Mhm.
so I was having these expectations of him to heal something that I actually needed to heal with my father or
Yeah.
something that I need to heal with my mother. And it didn't mean that I had to sit in front of a room and he undo the healing work with them. It just
Yeah.
meant that I had to, the idea of my father, the idea of my mother, and the narratives that I took on because of my relationships with them led me to see how and what was my part in the demise of the marriage.
Wow. Yeah. So my next question I had for you, you kind of just touched on about that it did come from your childhood and how you were raised with your parents. And is that, in your opinion, the most common thing that makes people feel unlovable? Or is this something that people encounter along the way as well? It doesn't necessarily start at such a young age, do you think?
Um, I believe that our narratives and the way that we identify ourselves is based on what we learned when we were born into love, right?
Hmm.
We know nothing when we're born. Well, we know a lot actually. There's a lot of research that shows that actually we come with a lot of information.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of this information came from our lineage, came
Hmm.
from way before us. And so if there was trauma in your lineage, if your ancestors had, there's a lot of trauma, it sort of gets passed, it doesn't sort of, it gets passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the trauma that I had encountered had to do with my parents and then had to do with their parents and so on and so forth. And
Hmm.
so when it came to me, there was something different about me. There was something in me that I always knew, even as a young kid, that life is better than this,
Hmm.
that there's something off here. This isn't how a family behaves.
Yeah.
And I attuned to a different frequency and learned how to sort of see it, but not really participate in it.
Okay.
And so it took a while for me to really recognize that that's what I was doing as a defense mechanism to protect myself as a kid.
Hmm.
But I really truly believe that every single human that comes into this world comes from love and comes into love. And then you become imprinted by a blueprint that was created for you before you.
Hmm.
And then at some point when you're old enough and you're somewhat developed, you start to recognize that, wait a minute, I'm not that blueprint. I am not that thought. I am not that feeling. I'm not anything that happened to me.
Hmm.
Well, then who am I?
Yeah. And
Right.
that's
And
the
there was
self-discovery, right?
exactly.
Yeah. I like that. So now that you have taken the time to heal and get yourself to a different place and able to work with others, have you found yourself in relationships? Are you in a relationship now that you are able to find yourself being loved and lovable and reciprocating everything in a great way? Are you able to do that at this point?
Yeah, so I'm able to do it differently now. So I'm not in a romantic relationship currently.
Hmm.
I've been practicing having a relationship with myself and what does that feel like? Because I
Mm.
realize that while I truly 100% believe that the best relationship work we could ever do is not with a coach, it's not with a therapist, it's not with a book, it's not with anyone else, it's with yourself but it's actually with yourself reflected to you in a relationship. So we have to get into relationships in order for
Okay.
things to come up, for us to recognize and accept and be able to work through certain things that we need to heal.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, because I often talk about that, about finding yourself and doing different things to kind of love yourself again. But you're saying that you almost need to do that as well in a relationship to find out who you are within this relationship as well as being on your
Yeah.
own.
I mean, look, it's easy to be in a I've been in a relationship with myself for 4 years. It's so easy,
It's getting a
right?
lot easier for me. Let me tell you, I just said that the other day to my girlfriend, and she was asking me about going out on dates, and I was like, I don't know. I kind of like dating myself right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
easy. But
Hmm.
but then there's also an avoidance there too. At some
Yeah.
point, we have to recognize that, wait a minute, I'm avoiding actually doing the real work that I need to be,
Yeah.
even though I personally have and still continue to do a lot of deep work, a lot of deep,
Hmm.
because we're very layered.
Yeah.
Uh,
Onions.
We're yes, and there are many parts to us,
Yeah.
and all the parts that we have that's within us. So there's a there's a modality called IFS. It's the internal family system. And
Uh-huh.
in the internal family system, it states that it's almost like if you imagine your family and how everyone has a different character and everyone
Uh-huh.
plays a different role in the family. Like one person can really annoy you and the other person you're really close with.
Right.
And so we have all that inside of us. We have an internal family that we created. We have the really bitchy part, maybe, and the really quiet part, and the really small part, and the really insecure part, the really secure part, right? There's so many different parts and aspects of ourselves that we haven't met yet. And
Hmm.
we have to start to create dialogue with the parts of ourselves so that we can start to feel that it's safe again to fully express. Because when we were kids,
Hmm.
very little kids, we were able to express ourselves. We were able to, and then at some point, someone told us, shh, you're too
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, most kids have no fear at a young age, right? At
no,
all. Yeah. And
right.
they become more fearful the older they get and the more they're shushed, most likely.
Yeah, the more they're shushed and the more their feelings don't have space. And
Hmm.
so you grow up to be adults that you're not safe to be authentically yourself. And
Mm.
again, at some point, and I feel that we're constantly being rebirthed, right? We're going
Hmm.
through different cycles and different chapters and different seasons. And at some point in our 40s, usually we see this, that's when we sort of have a return. We have a return back to, well, who the fuck am I?
Right, right.
Who am
Yeah.
I?
Who am I?
Okay, let me start to peel the onion. So then we begin to peel the onion.
Yeah.
Now they're rare and exceptional. My youngest client was 19 years old. And so, you know, that to me, that's great because that's like giving a 19-year-old who's actually supposed to mess up and supposed to make mistakes. It's supposed
Yeah.
to be right. Like you're supposed to go out in the world and just fuck up.
Yeah.
It's giving them a lot of tools to be able to fuck up and be able to know what to do with it
When they do.
when they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the point is not to create perfection. The
Yeah.
point is actually to do the opposite.
Mm.
It's to allow ourselves to be okay with a mess
Yeah. That's
and know
nice. I
what to
like
do
it.
with it.
Yeah. So I listened to one of your episodes where you talked about a conscious relationship.
Hmm.
Okay, so you mentioned it was not necessarily for the faint of heart. So can you tell me and tell my audience exactly what a conscious relationship is and why it's maybe not for everyone?
Yeah, so I believe that there's um, many interpretations of what a conscious relationship is. But I think, in short, if I could express to me what a conscious relationship means, it's just two conscious humans having a conscious experience, meaning they're present in their life. They're able to take accountability, responsibility for their own experience as it's happening. And so a lot of times, choosing into a conscious relationship means that you're going to see a lot of shit you probably have hidden in a closet a long time
Yeah.
ago. and you're going to have uncomfortable conversations, and you're going to
Yeah.
have moments where you want to throw something out at the other person. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, the commitment is that you're both consciously choosing in, and you're choosing to always walk in the same direction and to walk towards one another. And the minute
Mm.
one partner starts to walk in a different direction, now we're starting to see this, that now we're starting to see the unconscious part of us coming out, and now we're noticing separation, and we're noticing, rather than feeling as though we have created a safe space to work through something together,
Mm-hmm.
now we're going in two different corners in a ring.
Yeah.
If you think of a boxing ring,
Yeah.
putting on our boxing gloves, and we're fighting to be right, and we're fighting
Interesting.
and we're fighting and we're fighting, and nothing happens.
Mm. So
Nothing.
is that why it's kind of not for everybody? Because it's a lot to handle, right? It sounds like you have to be very devoted and
It's yes, it's very devotional, and it's also
mm-hmm.
like it's a commitment. It's knowing that you play a part in every experience that's occurring in the relationship. And or notice I didn't say you, it's not a fault thing. Like it's not your
Yeah.
fault that somebody is having this experience, but maybe something you said or something you did could have caused a reaction in your partner. Well, how can you
Uh-huh.
help your partner now, rather than taking it personally, right? It's
Yeah.
another way that we go in our separate corners, is when we take something personally, we start to get defensive. And now there's no space for your partner to feel safe or to feel as though they could come towards you. Now they back. See, you just did that with your body.
Mhm.
Now,
I did,
now
yeah.
you just naturally back away.
Yeah.
And then that's when we start to see a lot of issues, and that's when we become not conscious. And those are the normal relationships we see. The conscious
Mhm.
relationships, when they're noticing the pullback,
Yeah.
they call themselves out on it. They recognize
Okay.
it, or their partner calls them forward and says, "Hey, I noticed that you just disconnected. Come back."
Oh,
or
wow.
or what's going on for you?
Yeah.
Right. So it's again, it's a commitment to walk towards one another, even when times are hard, even if it's uncomfortable, and the
Mhm.
willingness to work through
Mhm.
together.
And you both have to be willing. Like you said, that's yeah, if one is not, you are
Well,
it's a
so actually
unconscious.
that's a really great point that you bring. So sometimes, and Brene Brown had a really perfect, and I actually it's one of my posts shares that, where she says that sometimes you're not going to be 100% in your relationship. Sometimes you might be at 50, and sometimes you
Mhm.
might be at 40, and
Mhm.
sometimes you might be at 10. And so a conscious relationships allows you to say, I'm at a 10 today. And and the other person gets to say, let me help you get to 90. Let me
That
make up the 90% that you can't today. How can I support you?
wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, we're not always 50-50.
Yeah. But you
We're
got to
not.
be there to support the other person when they're not,
Yeah.
so that you both get to the same place.
And sometimes someone can't be there,
Yeah.
for whatever reason that is. And so it doesn't mean that now I think sort of a day-to-day relationship that we're all used to having,
Yeah.
a very sleepy is what I call it, a
Mhm.
sleepy relationship, or you're just
Mhm.
kind of going through the motions. You're not going to have someone that's able to recognize that something is going on with you. You're at a 10% today, and they're not going to be able to offer you the support that you might need.
And how do you react to that though? I mean, at some point it feels like I've had in my past relationships where I feel like I'm constantly the giver and they're just taking and taking and taking. And I am always there, the supportive when they're at 10%. I am the one that's like, let me get you back up at the other 90. So when they are never really reciprocating that to you as well, maybe they think they are, but they're not. How do you handle something like that?
Well, I also have a theory on us people pleasers who
Mm-hmm.
take on a lot more and overcompensate. That we actually set up those dynamics because that's familiar to us. It
Mm-hmm.
is safer for us to help somebody and take care of something and be nice to someone when when instead of allowing and trusting. There's
Right.
something in us that doesn't trust that they can handle it. And so what do you do when that happens, when you're constantly the giver? Well,
Mm-hmm.
you have a come to Jesus with yourself and say, "Okay, how much of this is me sort of not allowing this person to rise up?
Okay.
And how much of it is that I'm with a partner that's actually not aligned with me?"
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, because sometimes we're, like you said, we're just doing it to kind of like the delegation thing. It's easier just to do it ourselves than to delegate, right? So in order to just get it done, we just hop in and do it instead of sitting back and letting them do something first or try to help.
Yeah. I mean, look, how many times can you ask your partner to take out the trash until you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it myself.
Do it myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to also, again, it's, people laugh at me because I always tell them I have so many great conversations with myself because
Yeah.
I'm always like, I'm checking myself often. This is what's so great about being conscious, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% conscious. Nobody is. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times it's so much easier to be unconscious.
Right.
But when I am in my consciousness and I am noticing a pattern and a behavior in myself that's showing that, where, okay, here's how I could say this. The world and life and the external things we see outside of ourselves is feedback for us about what's going on internally. What we
Okay.
see externally is a reflection of what's happening internally.
Okay.
What we
Interesting.
often do is we look to the external to blame and to shame and to judge. And because it's easier to see outside of ourselves than it is to see within ourselves. So if you start to build a practice with yourself of checking in with yourself, like, hey, I'm noticing I'm giving a little more than the other person. I'm going to try it differently today. I'm going to try to sort of back away and ask for what I need.
Okay.
And see what happens. And then I'm going to do it again tomorrow. I'm going to see what the world reflects to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you start to see. And now again, at some point, you're going to notice that, okay, well, maybe I'm with somebody who's just, that's not their
Day
thing.
10, they're still not,
They
they're
don't
just not getting it.
They're just, I mean, look, I hate doing the dishes. So if I'm with a partner who really needs a partner to do the dishes, I don't know how much at one point I'm actually going to love it.
You might start. That's a great point. So in the context of my show for Mrs. Smith, so I dive into diverse facets of relationships, with a primary focus, like I said, on women's post-divorce reinvention. So what would be, I guess, your transformative guidance that you would offer women that are trying to navigate this new journey of self-renewal? Is there something you would kind of suggest, like, that they do? I mean, I've done, I did an episode on like the top 10 things to go do. Of course, a vibrator was right up there, number one, to get that for yourself. Go travel by yourself, go take a dance class, get a tattoo. There were many different things, therapy for yourself, just to kind of get in a good conscious mode. Is there things like that you would suggest that women do just to get themselves back up out there?
That's such a good question. I would say the first thing that came to mind was acceptance. And it's actually my word for 2024 because I think it keeps coming up and
it's
my
better than
clients
gaslighting and toxic.
Yeah.
The last years.
Yeah. So when you accept where you're at, the season that you're in, you can now work with it.
Okay.
Right. And when you start to accept that that's where you're at. So, okay. So let's say you just went through a divorce and it's horrible. So first step is I accept that I'm here. Now what? And the next step is to get support because no one should do this alone. No one. Without my village, I could have never gone through what I went through if I were to do it alone.
Yeah.
Which I did my marriage alone. So when I was able to I was able to accept and then access the vulnerable part of me where I conceded. I literally said, I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
I'm broken right now. I'm feeling broken. This is so hard for me. Can you help me? People started to rise up and support me.
Yeah.
And then I think the third, once you get support, and however that looks to you, I don't think there's a particular formula that works for everyone. I think to some people it might mean you get a therapist or a coach, or and it could just mean you create a circle around you with like-minded people who are going through the same thing. Right. And I think the other thing is allow yourself to feel.
Yeah.
Because
your grief.
Yes. Because if you don't recognize that there's grief that's present when you lose a relationship or when you lose someone or you lose anything, no matter if they're still present on earth side or they're
Mm-hmm.
not,
Mm-hmm.
there's grief to be felt.
Yeah.
If you bypass grief, you will continue to come back to the same point because life will continue to redirect you back to the place of needing to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to feel it either through anger, you're going to see things that are going to make you really mad. And anger is for a lot of people, it's a really easy access point
Yeah.
because a lot of it is outside of ourselves. So we could just be angry at something.
Yeah.
But feeling your feelings is the allowance of any feeling that comes about, sadness, happiness, whatever it is, to feel it fully. To like really feel it. If you're feeling rage, to
Yeah.
rage. If you're feeling sadness, let yourself be sad.
I think that's huge. That's very, very important to do that. I think that's all part of the process for sure.
And then I think you could do all the other wonderful things that you
Yeah.
want. So then you buy the
Then go get
vibrator.
the vibrator.
Then you're like, okay, well then you start to be in the question of, okay, well then who am I now that I'm not identifying with this other human that I've
Yeah.
identified with, for this X amount of time. Now who am I? And you start to explore yourself. And you're like,
Mm.
right, you sign up for something new that maybe you were curious about.
Yeah. And what an amazing opportunity to learn new things and meet new people. And that has been definitely the biggest joy for me. And I've learned to appreciate my girlfriend nights out, so much more, or just a little time at home by myself, the things that I didn't know I was okay with before. I was always looking for the company of a man, and these things have not replaced it entirely. I don't want that, and I don't want to get myself, when they say if you're single too long, you start to enjoy and it makes it harder to have somebody in your life. I don't want that, but I'm definitely enjoying just doing my own thing, not having to worry about a man. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think you start to get to know yourself and you start to like yourself so that
Mm-hmm.
you could actually build the belief system that you are likable or that you're
Yeah.
lovable or that so that going back to your question before,
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I 100% believe that I'm lovable because I
Yes.
love myself, right? And I
Yeah.
have a lot of value to bring to a relationship.
Yeah.
100% I'm not there's nothing in me that feels that I'm wavering in that.
Wow.
None
What
of
an
it.
amazing discovery. Like that's got to just feel so rewarding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Just at
again,
peace.
it continues because I'm constantly doing the work. And I think a lot of people think that they just land in healing. They go to therapy for 6 weeks. And, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
healed. I've done the work. No, no, my friend.
No,
No,
nope.
no.
It's continuing education. That's for sure.
You got to take those continued education courses and
Yep.
you got to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
You got to give yourself grace because
Mm.
you're a human being having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Be
So
kind to
good.
yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ozzie, I've loved having you here. Thank you so much. This is all so good. And I would honestly love to have you back another time. I think you just have so much insight to give us and stuff. I need more questions for you. So I'm ready. But before you go, I like to do a little fun from Mrs. to Ms. Fast Facts. It's just like a this or that. It's whatever first comes to your mind. It's relationship driven, just for a little fun and keeping it light. So I have 10 questions. I'm going to give you a this or that. And you just give me first, whichever one you like
Okay.
best. Okay.
That's good.
Number one, exciting adventures or a comfortable, stable routine.
Exciting adventures.
Number two, open and honest communication or surprise gestures to express love.
Open and honest conversations.
Me too. Okay, big family gatherings or small, intimate dinners.
Small, intimate dinners.
Future plans or present moments.
Present moment.
Oh, I love it. Quality gifts or thoughtful gestures.
Thoughtful gestures.
Shared hobbies or independence.
Shared hobbies.
Apologize. Oh.
It's so funny. I just second guessed myself. The first thing that came to mind was independence, but in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you just like to do things on your own. It's kind of a mixture. I think we like a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Apologize first or wait for the apology.
That's a tough one because it depends.
It depends on what it's about. If you know you're right, you don't want to apologize first.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Can I go back to it?
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm getting a little dirty here. Spontaneous or planned intimacy?
Oh, okay. I teach planned intimacy, but let's say spontaneous. That's the first thing that came to
Spontaneous.
mind.
I kind of like that too. Intimacy in the morning or at night before bed?
Morning is exciting.
Yeah, I see. I think nighttime. I cannot get into it in the morning. I am just like, oh, I just want to lay there like a dead fish. Not that I would, but I want to. I like the excitement of the nightlife, I guess. And then the last one, this one might pertain to that one too. Lights on or off during sex?
Dimmed.
Yes, me too. Just a little, enough to see the good angles, but not too much.
I don't like them completely off. I like them dim because there's something sexy about like a dimmed light.
Yes, and I like to see their eyes. I'm kind of weird. I tend to kiss with my eyes open, so I'm a little weird like that, but I like to see that. So,
I don't mind my eyes open either. I like
oh, so maybe I'm not so weird after all.
No, you're not. I hate to tell you.
Oh my God, there was a guy on The Bachelor that did
Oh,
that.
yes.
You remember, did you see it, Matt
Yeah.
James or something? Every time
Yeah,
he
yeah,
kissed, he did it with
yeah.
the eyes open, and I was sitting there like, oh, I kind of like that. I don't know. There's something when you see into their soul, it gives a little bit of that extra spark, I
Yeah.
think. So I wanted to
But
write in and say it's all good.
it offers connection. You know, you can
Right.
really connect to someone's soul through their eyes.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to open your eyes. I love it.
I
Okay, you
think those
going?
are okay, really quickly,
No,
those
you're
who are
good.
afraid are usually afraid of intimacy because part of
Yep.
intimacy is through connection. Not that you need the eyes to connect. You could actually, I teach people when I work with couples how to connect
Mhm.
energetically, but also a lot of times I'll do soul gazing. So I'll have them their left eye or their left eye looking at their partner's left eye and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people who have a hard time with intimacy will start to chuckle or laugh or feel uncomfortable. And
Totally.
so the longer they do it, all of a sudden emotions come through and come out. It's actually a
Interesting.
really beautiful practice.
No, it sounds amazing. I think the best times that I've had, the most intimate times, are when somebody is connected with me on that level. And when they do, they're not afraid to open their eyes and look there. That nothing like it. Nothing like it. Okay, we going back to apologize first or wait for the apology? Or
Oh, I thought we were gonna, I thought you were gonna forget about it. You are
nah.
good. Well, I don't necessarily, okay, so I really believe in accountability as opposed to apologizing because I feel like
Mhm.
apologizing is such an easy thing for us to do, you know, saying I'm sorry, unless you really hurt someone and you intended on it. I think
Yeah.
to me what lands better is someone taking accountability for creating some sort of an experience for their partner.
Yeah.
Would I say it before them? No. If I had a part in it, yes, of
Yeah.
course. And I always believe in, every experience, like I said, every experience you have actually takes two. So
Mhm.
we both play a role in it. So I will take accountability for my part. And it could just be as simple as, you know what, I have to take accountability for not being present with you today.
I
And
love
I could I
that.
could see I could see how me not being present made you feel X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Great answer. That was a great answer. See, you did good because I let you take some time there to go back around to. Well, thank you once again for joining me today. I've
Yeah.
loved having you. This is so great. Where can people find you? You want to give me some of your handles?
Sure. I'm at I am Ozzie Osborne. Ozzie spelled Ozzie. Osborne is Osborne. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm rarely on Facebook, but
Mhm.
Instagram is mostly where I am. And my podcast, as Andrea so kindly mentioned, is Wisdom of Oz. And you can find me on any podcast platforms.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. It's so good. You guys got to go check it out. She has so much insightful information and great topics that she's discussing and talking about on all her episodes. So I implore you to go listen. So thank you once again for joining us. This is Andrea with From Mrs. to Ms. You can find me on any major streaming platform, and I am on Instagram at From Mrs. to Ms, as well as TikTok. And if you have any questions, you can email me at info@FromMrs2Ms.net. Thanks again for listening and have a great week. Bye.